This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, all through the night, I'm gonna let it shine. All through the night, I'm gonna let it shine. All through the night, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. All around the world, I'm gonna let it shine. All around the world, I'm gonna let it shine. All around the world, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
A reading from John, chapter 1, verses 1 through 14. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was with God in the beginning. Everything came into being through the Word, and without the Word, nothing came into being. What came into being through the Word was life, and the life was the light to all people. The light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not extinguish the light. A man named John was sent from the Lord. He came as a witness to testify concerning the light, so that through him everyone would believe in the light. He himself wasn't the light, but his mission was to testify concerning the light.
The true light that shines on all people was coming into the world. The light was in the world, and the world came into being through the light. But the world didn't recognize the light. The light came to his own people, and his own people didn't welcome him. But those who did welcome him, those who believed in his name, he authorized to become God's children, born not from blood, nor from human desire or passion, but born from God. The Word became flesh and made his home among us. We have seen his glory, glory like that of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth.
Light quite possibly serves as the most prominent symbol of life. In the biblical story of creation, within the very first day, when the earth was complete chaos and darkness covered the face of the deep, God said, "Let there be light." And there was light, with light being called day and darkness being called night. The life cycles of plants and animals depend on this very light. There's an old country gospel camp song by Hank Williams entitled, "I Saw the Light." The Buddha talks about spiritual growth in terms of enlightenment. And cartoon characters are often seen with a light bulb thrown above their head to indicate that they have a good idea. And tonight, on this Christmas Eve, we hear again these well-known words from Isaiah chapter 9. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined. And on this night, on Christmas Eve in particular, we understand, as author Gail Ramshaw writes, that the light that comes from God is other than, greater than, the natural light of the universe. It is the person of Christ. And this is a big deal. For not only is Christ a newborn, but he is the light of God, shining from before creation. And he came so that there shall be endless peace, upheld with justice and with righteousness. The 4 weeks before Christmas are known as Advent, according to the church calendar. During the season of Advent, here at Good Samaritan United Methodist Church, we've been looking closely at a different African American spiritual each Sunday. The African American spiritual is a unique genre in sacred music, and there is hardly a musical form that embraces the hope and joy, transformation, and communal healing embodied by Christ than through these songs. These spirituals manifest the cries we hear in Luke and Isaiah, that God pulls down the powerful and sends the rich away empty, while lifting up the lowly and feeding the hungry. African American spirituals are full of stories of redemption and images of liberation and the promise of freedom. So they have been perfect sources of study while we have been waiting these last 4 weeks for Christ to come. During Advent, we looked at these 4 spirituals. Mary had a baby, rise up, shepherd, and follow. Children, go where I send thee, and go tell it on the mountain. There is movement and action present in each of these songs, all stemming from a deep faith and pointing to liberation and freedom that may not be realized right in this moment, but is looked on with hope and promise in the coming of Christ. We learned in this worship series that these songs don't just contain spiritual warnings, but practical warnings as well. Warnings such as to make it on time to the train station if you've planned an escape from slavery. Encouragement to rise up and follow the path carefully that's been laid out for you. That there is security in numbers, and an encouragement to move past words and onto concrete action. Each of the 4 worship services in this series can be accessed on our Facebook page or our website, good.org, if you'd like to hear more. Of course, it should not be lost on us that Christmas Eve may have been among the most successful night for escapes. As slaveholders and their guests were partying in the main house, many pursued their freedom and liberation on this, the very night Christ was born. Tonight's invitation is to look more closely at the spiritual "This Little Light of Mine." This song doesn't go quite as far back as the others we've studied, as it was written in the early 1900s. It was a popular children's song in the 1940s, but then it was transformed into a freedom song during the civil rights movement in the United States. Since spirituals come out of an oral song tradition that spread through many contexts and beyond social boundaries, there are many variations in both the words sung and the tune it is sung to. There's a story told from Highlander Folk School in Monteagle, Tennessee. Fernando Silva and Michaela Turner report that this school was fully integrated and it produced a number of Black civil rights activists, including Fannie Lou Hamer, who added a new stanza to This Little Light of Mine that opposed the darkness of racism by claiming, "I've got the light of freedom. I'm going to let it shine." Freedom singer Rutha Mae Harris says, "You can't just sing This Little Light of Mine. You got to shout it. Everywhere I go, Lord, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine." The Freedom Singers were a renowned quartet that raised money for student activists during the civil rights movement in the 1960s. Music was an anchor, Harris says. It kept us from being afraid. And this little light of mine, it helped steady protesters' nerves as abusive police officers threatened to beat them or worse. I would guess many of us were introduced to This Little Light of Mine as a children's song. And we've just heard how instrumental it was in the mid-20th century. Yet, it remains a powerful force for this generation today. In 2017, Reverend Osagifu Sekou organized a counter-protest in Charlottesville, Virginia, when white supremacists and alt-right supporters gathered there for the Unite to Right rally. Reverend Sekou said, "We had originally said we were going to stand silent, but the Nazis were marching past us in these various battalions, cursing and yelling mostly homophobic slurs at us." He says he felt the energy of those additional people that had gathered there who hadn't been trained in the peaceful protest practices they were following. And those additional people, according to Reverend Sekou, were getting amped up. So he knew in that moment that he had to change the atmosphere. And he thought, I know song can do that. So he broke into This Little Light of Mine. Their singing voices began to rise over the voices from the rally crowd, and tensions went down. Reverend Sekou says this seemed to shake the Nazis, as if they didn't know what to do with all that joy. As far as he was concerned, he and his counter-protesters were not going to let the darkness have the last word. I think that captures the why of Christmas. God bringing light into the world through this little baby born in a manger. This light of God that comes through Christ never goes out. And as children of the light, it is for us to continue carrying Christ's hope, love, joy, and peace, along with redemption, freedom, and liberation, into those places where it is needed. The invitation is there, and the light is within us. So may we be so bold as to not hide it under a bushel, but to let our light shine. Amen.